This eternal problem of never really knowing if your client is in a trance or not. And there is a resistance when people resist, but if they are in a hypnotic trance, they don't resist anymore. That is the cool thing. And in this video, you're going to learn 5 signs to know if your client or if the person in front of you is in a trance or is experiencing some kind of a generative trance or not. And it may not be the signs you think about the most. And at the end of this video, I will give you a simple, very simple technique to create a trance or to help the person go into a trance just with your eye contact. So obviously there are different kinds of hypnotic trances. It is a very vague term. It may relate to a lot of different things. Here we want to focus on the kind of relaxed hypnotic state, relaxed hypnotic trance, where people are getting more open to change, where people are getting more receptive, more calm and receptive to suggestions. That is the thing we want to target here. So the first essential sign that people are getting into a trance or are already into a trance, and they may go in and out very rapidly, and this has threat to covert conversational hypnosis, because they will have their eyes open and it will be during a conversation. You won't go through the whole induction, but it happens, this first sign, when you say something, like you reframe something they said or you give some insight and they look down and silence. Like, oh. This is a sign they have just accessed something very deep inside themselves. And if it happens, especially just after you said something, then you know, like say something like a reframe or like a statement about their childhood or whatever you said. When you say something, they go like this. It means they have just accessed some very deep state, and this is from there that you can better use the suggestions, embedded commands, metaphors, stories. This is where you want to use them, because the person has just accessed a state of deep openness, a state of deep confusion where his or her mind becomes open, because you have just made him reevaluate something. So it is a very clear sign that the path is open to use some suggestion. The second sign is not necessarily visual, although it might be. It is whenever they start on a general way to slow down. If they speak really fast and they have tons of ideas, and suddenly they start to take more time and think more, you know, and yeah. When they slow down, or when their voice is slowing down, like they talk super fast and have so much ideas, and suddenly, actually I was in that someday, you know. When they start to slow down like this, it means same thing, their mind is starting to reevaluate, to change things maybe, to notice something they had not noticed from their past, whatever. But when there is a general slowing down of pace, of tempo, of their tonality, of their gesture maybe, of their facial expression, when it becomes more slow, it means same thing, they have accessed some trance somehow, which doesn't mean to go through a whole induction of counts from 1 to 10 and look at this pendulum. It happens all the time in natural conversations. It is your job as a hypnotist to notice when this happens, and you can obviously trigger it more. But even when you don't trigger it yourself, just notice when that happens with the person in front of you, because those are the moments where you can the most influence that person unconsciously by using a metaphor or whatever else technique you want to use. The third sign is a very clear sequence of words. So it is an auditory signal. It is what I call the I don't know threshold. This is something I talk about in a program I created. When your client is reaching the continuous I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. When they reach something like this, it means you have definitely hit some big limiting belief that they have just like stumbled upon, and they don't know anymore. Like it's getting to the confusion phase of, oh, there is a block there, but I don't know what it is. Like you're asking questions, you reframe what they said, you make them visualize some modality stuff. At some point, they get to the I don't know. It's weird. I don't know. When you get there, it means there is a massive limiting belief here and you have just hit it. So this is where you can start to use language patterns, same thing, embedded commands, use all the Milton Erickson language. And when you suddenly realize that this happens in your life, and what will happen if tomorrow, if any time but tomorrow, you start to evaluate things differently, this kind of mind-bending language, you can use that during those moments of I don't know. It will be way more powerful than if you try to use it at the very beginning of the session when the person is not even hypnotized yet. Most likely, it will be less powerful than if you use it at that moment when you have hit the, I don't know, threshold where people are starting to reevaluate and have just hit the main limitation or limiting belief that was holding them back. The fourth sign is a very intense glazed focus, like in their eyes, when they start to really focus like really intensely, especially when this marks a change compared to their nonverbal behavior from the beginning of the session or the beginning of the interaction, if it was not in therapy, maybe it was in sales. If they are speaking fast, or no matter what kind of pace they have when they speak, but if their eyes keep going into every direction and they keep thinking like this, but if suddenly they start to really pause and focus on your eyes or on some point of your face, it means same thing, they have access to some deep state, you know, much more suggestible state. So really keep being aware to what their eyes are doing. You may measure, you know, the eye accessing cues, visual, auditory on the sides, kinesthetic, auditory language, internal dialogue, sorry. You can notice all those cues, but even without that, just pay attention to their eyes, and whenever they switch from moving their eyes in every direction to laser focus on you, when they are getting like this as you speak, especially if it is changed, if it is a change compared to the way they were behaving before, so far in the interaction, it means they have just accessed some deep trance. Once again, this is where you want to infiltrate all your embedded commands, metaphors, stories. This is much more powerful at that moment. And the last one, the number 5, is very simple. It may not always be a sign of deep trance, but it is a sign that they are starting to access some trance. Same thing, it may not be relevant if it is something that is maintained from the beginning, but if it is something that happens suddenly after you said something, you know you have just said something that have made them access some deep trance. It is the number 5 sign, the head tilted on the side. When you speak and you talk, and they start to tilt the head on the side, it means they are very actively listening. This is something physiologically we all do when we tend to focus more into something we hear. We tend to do like this. Notice how many times people on the phone are like this? Because it is how your brain, this one way your brain is processing deep auditory acuity. So when you get into deep auditory acuity, it is very often a sign of trance. This one may not be the best to really notice a deep trance, because that sign may happen in a normal conversation where nothing is really relevant. But when you get a cluster of all those signs together, like 2 or 3 of those signs happening at the same time with the head tilted being one of them, you know you are into some very deep trance. The person is getting into some deep trance, and you can use that to your advantage during a session. Now, if you want to create that trance, let's say you don't see any of that, you don't see any of those signals, and the person is just stuck, doesn't want to get hypnotized. One thing you can do to produce some light trance, and it won't do anything like the person being brain controlled. It's nothing like this. It's just you will get the person into some more receptive state. More receptive doesn't mean control. This is the misconception I see all the time. Like, but I don't understand. I thought it was working for hypnosis, but the person is still talking. Well, hypnosis doesn't always mean eyes closed like this. It's just one way of using hypnosis. When you want to do therapy, you don't need to use that. You just need to get the person into some receptive state where they are open to learning new things and to accept new learning experiences. So for this, you can use this simple trick of visualizing like a red orb inside the head of the person. You imagine there is a red sphere at the center, at the core, at the center of their head, in the middle. And you imagine you are visualizing, you are targeting that with your eyes as you speak, as if every word you say was projected on that red sphere and was penetrating that red sphere. It is like a metaphor, it is a visual imagery to help your unconscious to be more influential, because it will train you to be more influential with your eyes, with the words you say, and with your voice tonality. When you focus that much, the more you focus, the more the person is going to be focused on what you say. Mirroring, you know how it works, rapport. So you can visualize that in the head of your client, of the person, and at certain moments when you maintain, and I insist on maintain, it's not just the point of doing it for 2 seconds, it is to maintain that red orb inside your mind, inside his mind for like 10 minutes. At some point the person is going to chill out, calm down, and start to get into some receptive trance, because you're imposing that frame of hyper-focused trance, because you're putting yourself into a deep trance just to maintain that visualization as you speak. It takes a bit of training, of course, but it works. So you can train yourself to do this, and that will help you to get the person into a very deep trance. Now, if you want to learn more about how to use all this technology, especially once you have the person in the trance and you want to know what to say, exactly what embedded commands to use, what kind of reframing and how can I reframe the limiting beliefs, I have a complete covert hypnosis tutorial in the description, where you have a summary of all those things and a complete description of how can you use language and how can you use persuasion in your day-to-day conversations, as in therapy, as in sales, as in anywhere you want to use that. It is in the description, it is completely free, and it is for you.